You know what I would love? I would love to be a very popular radio host, podcast host, great father, great husband, and live a very happy life where I can run a major organization that influences the country, and I could pick up the phone, the president answers on the first ring. That would be awesome.
But I feel like you're doing that right now.
So maybe I'm living the life of research.
Counting or not counting gang violence.
Oh my God. Cody, go, run. Oh.
Violence. Great.
On September 10th, 2025, during a scheduled speaking event at Utah Valley University, a gunshot was fired from a rooftop roughly 142 yards away. The round struck Charlie Kirk, halting the program instantly. The outdoor venue had no metal detectors, bag checks, or rooftop surveillance in place, and only 6 campus officers were present at the time. Law enforcement quickly sealed the area, and investigators recovered shoe marks, palm prints, and forearm prints from the rooftop. Video footage also showed a figure jumping from the scene immediately after the shot. Within 2 days, 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson surrendered at a sheriff's office and was charged with aggravated murder, with prosecutors announcing intent to seek the death penalty.
New images and videos now out, and the search intensifying for the person you see in these photos right here, the suspect in the deadly shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. It's now been more than 40 hours since Kirk was killed, assassinated by a single bullet. And still, there is no one in custody, and authorities have not publicly identified this man. But we do now have this surveillance video from right after the shooting. Investigators say it shows the suspect running across the roof of a building at Utah Valley University campus, then jumping off, as you see right there, escaping then into a wooded area. Police have now acknowledged, though, that they have no idea whether this man is even still in the state. The FBI is offering a reward of up to $100,000 in this case. Utah's Governor Spencer Cox says authorities have received more than 7,000 leads and tips, conducted nearly 200 interviews. Cox says the state will pursue the death penalty in this case, and he's made this plea to the public.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We got him.
A suspect is in custody in the shooting death of Charlie Kirk. Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old southern Utah man, reportedly confessed to the shooting to his father. A minister friend of the family urged Tyler to turn himself in to authorities.
I think with a high degree of certainty, we have him in custody.
President Trump broke the news that authorities had a suspect in custody during a live interview with Fox and Friends. Conservative activist Kirk was fatally struck in the neck with a bullet on Wednesday while speaking at an event at Utah Valley University. On Thursday, Kirk's body was flown home to Phoenix, Arizona on Air Force Two, accompanied by Vice President Vance. President Trump is calling for the death penalty in the case. The death penalty is legal in Utah.
Questions remain over whether Robinson acted alone, how the rifle was transported undetected, and why adequate security measures were not implemented for an event featuring a high-profile, controversial speaker. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Charlie Kirk was born on October 14, 1993, in Arlington Heights, Illinois. He grew up in the neighboring community of Prospect Heights, a suburban environment northwest of Chicago. His family structure was middle class and stable. His father, Robert W. Kirk, worked as an architect. His mother, Catherine Kirk, started as a financial trader and later transitioned into a career as a mental health counselor. Kirk's early education followed a standard suburban path. He briefly attended Wheeling High School, where he was not known for academic excellence but showed interest in leadership and debate. After graduation, he enrolled at Harper College, a local community college. He did not complete a degree, leaving school to pursue political activism. This decision would define the course of his life and public career. Kirk's political involvement began while still a teenager. At the age of 18, he gained national attention through an article published in Breitbart News in 2012, which criticized liberal dominance on college campuses and called for greater conservative youth engagement. The article positioned him as an emerging voice among young conservatives and opened doors into broader political circles. Later that year, Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA, TPUSA, an organization designed to mobilize conservative students on high school and college campuses. At the age of 18 to 19, he assumed leadership and began building the group from a small startup into a national presence. TPUSA quickly expanded to hundreds of college campuses, organizing chapters, conferences, and events that focus on free markets, limited government, and traditional conservative messaging. The group's growth was rapid. Within several years, TPUSA became a major hub for conservative youth engagement, with high visibility at political rallies and conferences. Kirk himself became the face of the organization, recognized as one of the youngest influential figures in the modern conservative movement. Kirk developed a reputation as a youth whisperer of the American right, frequently appearing at events aimed at college students and young voters. His ties to the Make America Great Again (MAGA) movement were solidified through his relationship with Donald Trump. He became a frequent guest at rallies and was an outspoken defender of Trump's policies during the 2016 and 2020 elections. He also expanded his influence through media platforms. Kirk authored books, delivered keynote speeches, and launched the Charlie Kirk Show, a podcast and online talk program that gained a wide audience. His content often addressed political polarization, cultural debates, and criticisms of progressive policies. In later years, Kirk's rhetoric shifted from general conservative activism toward more explicit Christian nationalism. He positioned himself not only as a political organizer, but also as a cultural figure, advocating for the integration of faith into political and national identity. This evolution expanded his following, but also heightened controversy around his persona. In May 2021, Kirk married Erica Franzva, a podcaster and businesswoman. The couple had 2 children during their marriage, a daughter born in 2022 and a son born in 2024. Kirk identified strongly with evangelical Christianity, emphasizing the role of faith in his personal and public life. His speeches and writings frequently blended religious conviction with political messaging, reinforcing his image as both activist and cultural commentator. Utah Valley University, UVU, located in Orem, Utah, was the site of the shooting that ended Kirk's life. UVU is one of the largest public universities in the state, with an enrollment of approximately 44,000 students. Its student body is diverse, but the surrounding region reflects Utah's cultural and religious demographics, with a significant portion identified with conservative or religious values. The university had previously hosted a variety of political events, guest speakers, and public debates, some of which had drawn both interest and controversy. As a commuter campus with a large population, its infrastructure prioritized academics and student services rather than large-scale security for political rallies. On an average day, UVU campus security included routine patrols and a limited number of uniformed officers. The university had not historically faced major incidents involving violent crime or political unrest, and its security structure reflected this history. The event where the shooting took place was part of TPUSA's American Comeback Tour. The purpose of the tour was to bring conservative messaging directly to students through live debates, discussions, and interactive sessions. The Prove Me Wrong format, in particular, placed Kirk in an open forum where students could challenge his positions directly. The Utah stop was strategically chosen. TPUSA had been expanding its presence among conservative student groups in the state, and Kirk's popularity among young Republicans in Utah provided a ready audience. Promotion for the event was extensive. Flyers circulated across campus, posters appeared in student gathering areas, and announcements spread through TPUSA's social media channels. Anticipation was high, with hundreds expected to attend. Campus chatter reflected both strong support and sharp opposition to Kirk's appearance. The event was scheduled for noon on September 10, 2025, outdoors on the university grounds. A large white tent was erected to house the stage and audience seating. Chairs were arranged in rows to accommodate several hundred attendees. The open format allowed walk-ins and spontaneous participation, consistent with Pew's styled outreach. Security measures, however, were limited. There were no metal detectors installed at the entrances. Attendees' bags were not checked, and there were no restrictions on bringing personal items into the venue. Campus security presence was light, with only a handful of uniformed officers on site. Most critically, the surrounding rooftops were unmonitored. Buildings adjacent to the tent had accessible rooftops without surveillance or patrol oversight. This left potential vantage points unsecured, a vulnerability that would later prove decisive. The event at Utah Valley University began around noon on September 10, 2025. It was part of the Prove Me Wrong tour hosted by Charlie Kirk, who was taking questions directly from the audience. The format encouraged open debate, often involving polarizing topics. On this occasion, reports indicate Kirk was speaking about mass shootings and issues related to transgender policies, subjects that typically generated strong reactions. At approximately 12:10 p.m., the routine was broken. A single rifle shot was fired from an elevated position. The projectile struck Kirk in the neck. He collapsed instantly on the stage, unable to continue. The crowd reacted in immediate panic. Students and attendees screamed, dove for cover, and scrambled in different directions. Those seated near the front rushed back, while others ducked under chairs or ran across the lawn. Several individuals have been live streaming the event. Their footage captured fragments of the moment, but the feeds quickly cut off amid the chaos. These clips circulated online within minutes, though none provided a full, clear view of the shooter. The combination of panic on the ground and unclear online recordings added confusion to the unfolding crisis. The initial forensic analysis of the incident began shortly after law enforcement arrived on the scene. Investigators examined the trajectory of the bullet and determined that it had been fired from an elevated rooftop position overlooking the university lawn where the event was being held. The angle and distance indicated that the shooter had selected a vantage point that allowed a clear line of sight to the stage. The weapon was later recovered near the rooftop. It was identified as an AR-15 style rifle. Beside it, investigators found a screwdriver and a towel wrapped around parts of the firearm. Laboratory testing revealed DNA on the towel. Additional signs of activity were located on the rooftop itself. Disturbed gravel patterns suggested that someone had been lying prone while aiming. This matched the trajectory findings, confirming the shooter had taken position in advance. Ballistics testing matched the recovered rifle to the bullet removed from the victim's body. This confirmed that the weapon was used in the shooting. These findings provided a direct physical link between the scene and the eventual suspect. Emergency medical responders moved quickly once Kirk collapsed. He was rushed from the stage to a nearby ambulance and transported to a hospital in Provo. Despite attempts to save him, he was pronounced dead later that day due to the severity of the neck wound. Meanwhile, the university campus was placed under full lockdown. Students were ordered to shelter in place or evacuate under supervision. SWAT teams and local police conducted sweeps of surrounding rooftops and nearby buildings. Authorities feared the shooter might still be active or that additional threats could exist. The search lasted several hours, but no gunman was found at the scene. Initial confusion surrounded the suspect's identity. Eyewitnesses described seeing a person with a backpack leaving the area shortly after the shot. However, descriptions varied, and the chaos made it difficult to gather accurate information immediately. Within the first day, investigators worked to piece together what had occurred. Witness testimonies were collected from students, staff, and attendees. Several reported seeing a figure on the rooftop just before or after the shot, though many could not give precise descriptions. Surveillance footage became crucial. Cameras from both the university and nearby businesses were reviewed. Investigators eventually located images of a man carrying a backpack and leaving the vicinity shortly after the shooting. These images were released publicly as law enforcement sought help identifying him. The turning point came when the parents of Tyler James Robinson recognized their son in the circulated images. They contacted authorities and confirmed his identity. This development shifted the investigation toward locating Robinson, who had fled the scene. After Robinson was identified, a manhunt began. Authorities tracked his movements, though details of his exact whereabouts during this period remain limited. For more than a day, he avoided capture. Approximately 33 hours after the shooting, Robinson surrendered to police. His arrest occurred without further incident. At the time of surrender, he was cooperative in terms of turning himself in, but did not provide detailed statements to investigators. Robinson was held without bail. Authorities placed him under suicide watch precautions, citing the nature of the crime and concerns for his safety while in custody. This ensured constant monitoring as the legal process began. The evidence connecting Robinson to the crime was multi-layered. DNA evidence. The towel recovered from the Rooftop rifle contained Robinson's DNA. This finding was decisive in placing him at the scene and in possession of the weapon. Digital evidence. Text messages Robinson had sent to his partner prior to the shooting suggested intent. In these communications, he made references indicating a significant action was forthcoming. While not a direct confession, the text implied foreknowledge of a planned act. Online activity. Messages from Robinson's online accounts, including Discord and other social media platforms, revealed discussions related to political violence. These digital traces provided investigators with additional context regarding motive and ideology. Physical evidence. In addition to the DNA findings, fingerprints consistent with Robinson were recovered from items on the rooftop. Gravel disturbance matched the shape of someone lying prone, further supporting that he had positioned himself to fire the shot. Together, these layers of evidence built a comprehensive case against Robinson. The physical, digital, and forensic findings aligned to show planning, execution, and direct presence at the scene. The arrest of Tyler James Robinson brought immediate focus on the background and motives of the man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk. Investigators, prosecutors, and the public began piecing together a profile that explained how a 22-year-old from Orem, Utah, could end up on the rooftop of Utah Valley University with a rifle, waiting for his target. Tyler James Robinson was 22 years old at the time of the shooting. He lived with his parents in Orem, Utah, only a few miles from Utah Valley University, where the fatal event took place. Neighbors described the Robinson household as quiet, with no obvious signs of instability or disruption. Robinson's employment history was minimal. Records indicate that he had held short-term jobs, mostly low-wage positions, but none lasted long. Former co-workers described him as quiet, reserved, and someone who kept himself. Acquaintances suggested that Robinson often appeared socially withdrawn, showing little interest in building long-term friendships or pursuing stable employment. He had previously been enrolled as a student at Utah Valley University, but dropped out before completing a degree. University records confirm his enrollment in general studies, but show no notable academic achievements or disciplinary issues. His decision to leave school was not linked to any formal incident, and he appeared to withdraw voluntarily. Robinson had no prior serious criminal record. Public databases show only minor infractions, none of which suggested a violent history. This lack of criminal background made his eventual actions more difficult to anticipate, as he was not flagged by law enforcement or university officials as someone posing a potential threat. The question of why Robinson carried out the shooting has remained at the center of the investigation. Multiple possible motives have been examined by law enforcement and prosecutors. One line of inquiry points to anger over the political climate. Robinson had reportedly expressed hostility toward conservative political figures, with specific frustration directed at organizations like Turning Point USA. Investigators noted that Robinson's online activity indicated disdain for right-wing politics, though no single post or statement explicitly outlined a plan to commit violence. Another avenue explored is ideological radicalization via online communities. Robinson had accounts on several platforms where political discussions took place. Some of these groups contain extreme rhetoric about political leaders' violence and distrust of institutions. While he was not a prominent voice in these spaces, his engagement with this content suggested a potential influence on his mindset. Investigators also considered personal struggles with identity, isolation, and mental health. Former acquaintances described Robinson as isolated, often avoiding social interaction. This pattern of behavior may have contributed to feelings of alienation and resentment. However, no medical documentation has been made public regarding a diagnosed mental health condition. There remains ambiguity because no direct manifesto or clear statement of intent was discovered. Unlike other politically motivated attacks where manifestos or public declarations provide insight into motive, Robinson left no such evidence. This absence complicates efforts to determine whether the shooting was primarily political, personal, or a combination of factors. Robinson's actions in the days and hours leading up to the event provide a clearer picture of planning and intent. Investigators discovered that Robinson had exchanged messages with his partner that hinted at his plans. In one text, he suggested that it will all make sense, a phrase prosecutors later cited as evidence of premeditation. These communications did not explicitly mention Charlie Kirk or the university event, but the timing aligned with preparations for the shooting. In terms of preparation, Robinson had acquired a rifle, a screwdriver, and other supplies used in the attack. The screwdriver was later recovered from the rooftop, where he positioned himself. Investigators concluded it was likely used to access the rooftop or adjust vantage points for a clear shot. On the day of the event, Robinson managed to climb onto the rooftop without being detected. The absence of rooftop surveillance or security personnel enabled him to move into position unnoticed. Once on the roof, investigators believe he lay in wait, positioning himself in the gravel where later forensic analysis confirmed his presence. Robinson remained in that location until the event began. At the precise moment during the Q&A session, he fired a single shot that struck Charlie Kirk, leading to the activist's death. Following his arrest, Robinson was formally charged with multiple offenses. Aggravated murder, the primary charge, carrying the possibility of the death penalty due to aggravating factors such as premeditation and political targeting. Felony discharge of firearm, linked to the act of firing a weapon in public, endangering multiple people in the crowd. Obstruction of justice, based on allegations that Robinson attempted to conceal evidence or mislead investigators during the initial stages of the inquiry. Witness tampering. Prosecutors cited communications suggesting he may have tried to influence statements from his partner. Violence in the presence of a child. Since minors were in the crowd during the shooting, this charge was added under Utah state law. Robinson's initial hearing took place within days of the arrest. The court denied bail, citing the severity of the charges and the risk of flight or further violence. The appointment of defense counsel faced delays. Robinson's case required a defense team qualified to handle potential death penalty litigation, and time was needed to secure appropriate representation. The prosecution announced consideration of the death penalty, pointing to aggravating factors, including premeditation, use of a firearm in a public space, and targeting of a high-profile political figure. This decision intensified the legal complexity of the case. Due to concerns over suicide risk, Robinson was placed in special housing arrangements at the jail. He remained under close observation, with measures in place to prevent self-harm while awaiting trial.
Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances. The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual other than Charlie Kirk and the defendant. Notice conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty or pursuant to Utah Code 76-3-207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole or an indeterminate term of not less than 25 years, and that may be for life. Victim targeting enhancement in violation of Utah Code annotated 76-3-203.14 sub 2. Tyler James Robinson intentionally selected Charlie Kirk because of Tyler James Robinson's belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political expression. Notice if the trier of fact finds beyond a reasonable doubt that the victim targeting enhancement applies, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider the defendant's selection of the victim as an aggravating factor. Violent offense committed in the presence of a child aggravating factor, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider as an aggravating factor in their deliberations that the defendant committed a violent criminal offense in the presence of a child. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm.
You are witnessing here our ABC News Live coverage. This is the first appearance in court, virtually you can see, which is how they do it. In this particular jurisdiction, Tyler James Robinson, the suspect, charged with aggravated murder among the 7 counts revealed late this afternoon. The judge is now reading those counts to the suspect. He nodded his head, understanding that the charges would be read to him. He was told he can have representation. The county attorney saying Robinson will face those 7 charges, including aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering.
Robinson's defense is expected to pursue several possible strategies. One likely argument is that of mental illness or diminished capacity. Defense attorneys may attempt to show that Robinson's actions stem from untreated psychological conditions that impaired his judgment. Without a documented history of treatment, however, the success of this argument remains uncertain. Another strategy involves challenging the handling of forensic evidence. The defense may argue that the DNA on the towel, fingerprints on the rooftop, and surveillance footage could have been mishandled or contaminated during collection. Such challenges are common in high-profile cases where forensic evidence plays a central role. A third approach is questioning the clarity of motive. Since no manifesto or explicit statement of intent was discovered, the defense may claim that prosecutors are making assumptions about Robinson's reasoning. By undermining the argument of political or ideological motivation, the defense could aim to reduce charges or avoid the death penalty. On September 10, 2025, the assassination of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University exposed a sequence of vulnerabilities and failures that extended beyond a single gunman. What followed was not only an intense investigation into the crime itself, but also a closer look at institutional security breakdowns, political responses, media saturation, and international consequences. Each layer reveals a larger framework of how this event reshaped discourse, governance, and perception both in the United States and abroad. One of the most significant lapses at Utah Valley University was a complete absence of rooftop surveillance and access control. The shooter, later identified as Tyler James Robinson, gained access to an elevated vantage point on a campus building adjacent to the event space. Investigators confirmed that the rooftop was unlocked and lacked any form of restricted access signage, locks, or surveillance. This provided the suspect with a clear line of sight into the event tent. Security experts reviewing the case noted that high-profile public appearances, especially those involving controversial figures, should have included perimeter sweeps and rooftop monitoring. In this instance, no checks were performed prior to the start of the event. The university also failed to deploy or contract drone surveillance during the event. Drone systems, commonly used in crowd management settings, could have provided aerial oversight of rooftops, parking lots, and other vantage points. Aerial scans would have likely detected a figure positioning himself on the rooftop before the event began. Law enforcement later admitted that drone monitoring was not considered, citing cost and lack of prior incidents on campus. However, security consultants reviewing the assassination argued that drone use is now a baseline requirement for outdoor political events involving controversial personalities. The event area was set up as an open tent with free entry from multiple sides of the lawn. No bag checks, metal detectors, or controlled entry points were used. This meant that anyone could carry firearms, knives, or other contraband into the audience. Although Robinson fired from a rooftop, rather than within the crowd, the lack of screening illustrated a broader systemic weakness. Documents later revealed that university administrators debated the use of controlled entry, but ultimately declined, arguing that the informal, debate-style format did not justify such measures. The absence of basic crowd screening protocols became one of the most scrutinized aspects of the post-incident review. In the days following the assassination, Utah Valley University officials released a statement promising a comprehensive review of campus security policies. The university announced that both internal audits and external security consultants would be used to assess vulnerabilities. The administration acknowledged that their protocols were inadequate for an event of this scale and profile, especially given Kirk's notoriety and history of drawing both supporters and protesters. To reinforce credibility, UVU contracted external experts specializing in counterterrorism and campus event security. These experts were tasked with identifying blind spots, recommending structural upgrades, and designing new emergency response protocols. Preliminary findings leaked to the press highlighted failures in perimeter control, rooftop access, and lack of active surveillance technology. Recommendations included installing access control locks on rooftops, developing drone monitoring capacity, and requiring law enforcement presence at all future political events. The student body reacted strongly, organizing petitions and demonstrations calling for immediate safety reforms. Student leaders argued that the administration failed to protect not only a guest speaker, but also the thousands of students and staff who attended or were nearby. Demands included increased campus police presence, upgraded surveillance systems, and clear communication of emergency protocols. The administration responded by promising to hold open forums, but students criticized the timeline as too slow for urgent safety concerns. Utah Governor Spencer Cox issued an immediate statement condemning the attack and pledging state cooperation with the investigation. Members of Congress across party lines released statements, though the language differed sharply by affiliation. Prominent conservative politicians characterized the incident as an act of political terrorism, warning that ideological violence was escalating to dangerous levels. Former President Donald Trump described Kirk as a fighter for American values and called the assassination a direct attack on free speech. Progressive lawmakers, while condemning the killing, also emphasized the dangers of political rhetoric fueling hostile climates. The event quickly became a focal point for partisan debate. Conservative media outlets framed the assassination as evidence of systemic targeting of right-wing voices, urging stricter laws against political violence. Liberal commentators, while denouncing the act, pointed to the polarizing nature of Kirk's own activism and his potential role in heightening tensions. This divergence deepened the political divide, with each side interpreting the same facts through ideological filters. The assassination dominated national headlines for weeks. Major networks devoted round-the-clock coverage, including live updates from Utah Valley University, press conferences with law enforcement, and panel discussions on security failures. News outlets competed to provide exclusive footage and eyewitness interviews, while speculation about the suspect's motives fueled continuous programming. Clips from live streams and audience cell phones spread across platforms within minutes of the event. The footage, showing Kirk speaking before collapsing, was replayed millions of times on social media. Platforms struggled to balance public interest with content moderation, as some clips were flagged for graphic content, while others circulated widely without restrictions. On social media, responses split into two dominant narratives. One side focused on mourning Kirk as a victim of political violence, sharing tributes and calls for justice. The other emphasized debates about free speech, security, and political responsibility, often framing the assassination within broader ideological battles. Hashtags trended globally, creating a digital echo chamber that intensified existing polarization. Conservative organizations outside the U.S. seized upon the assassination as a rallying point. In Europe, right-wing parties invoked Kirk as a symbol of the risks faced by outspoken conservatives. In South Korea, conservative student groups organized vigils, framing his death as proof of global threats to right-leaning voices. These movements portrayed Kirk as a martyr for ideological resistance, using the event to strengthen their own narratives of persecution. International right-wing media outlets dedicated extensive coverage to the assassination. In Europe, outlets sympathetic to nationalist movements highlighted the security failures as evidence of systemic neglect of conservative leaders. South Korean conservative media amplified the story, connecting it to their domestic political struggles. The international echo not only broadened Kirk's posthumous influence, but also globalized the discussion about political violence against conservative figures. The shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University raised a series of unanswered questions that continue to drive debate. Central among them is whether Tyler James Robinson, the 22-year-old suspect, acted entirely alone or if there were outside influences shaping his decision. Investigators have pointed to digital communications, text to his partner, Discord messages, and online activity that suggested he was preparing to act. However, the absence of a manifesto or clear statement of intent has left ambiguity about whether Robinson was guided purely by personal grievance, ideological radicalization, or possible encouragement from online communities. No evidence of a wider conspiracy has been confirmed, but a lack of clarity has fueled speculation about external influences. Another unresolved issue involves the level of security present at the event. Kirk was known for his polarizing views and for attracting both large followings and vocal opposition. Despite this, the university did not require metal detectors, controlled entry points, or rooftop surveillance. The outdoor tent setup created open lines of sight from nearby elevated structures, and investigators confirmed Robinson accessed a rooftop without being challenged. Questions remain about why such vulnerabilities existed given Kirk's profile and history of confrontations at public appearances. Whether this was a failure of risk assessment, budget limitations, or a belief that the Utah location was relatively low risk is unclear. The mechanics of how Robinson transported the rifle to the rooftop also remain a focus. Surveillance footage captured him walking with a backpack, later identified by family members, but details about the weapon's concealment and his ability to climb to the rooftop without intervention are significant gaps. Police recovered a screwdriver at the scene, suggesting forced access to a rooftop door or maintenance panel. The lack of early detection highlights both security blind spots and questions about whether routine patrols or camera coverage could have intercepted him before the shooting. Finally, the issue of warning signs has been raised. Robinson's parents reportedly recognized him from surveillance images after the attack and contacted authorities. Reports also suggest his partner received troubling messages hinting at violent intent. Whether earlier intervention could have prevented the event remains unanswered. Authorities have not publicly confirmed whether family or acquaintances observed concerning behavior prior to the day of the shooting. This uncertainty leaves an open question about the line between private suspicion and actionable warning signs in preventing acts of political violence. The assassination of Charlie Kirk fits within a broader pattern of rising threats and attacks against public figures in the United States. In recent years, incidents of attempted assassinations, attacks at campaign events, and threats directed toward politicians have increased. This trajectory has been linked to a climate of deepening polarization, where ideological opponents are not only debated but, in extreme cases, targeted violently. Kirk's killing echoes other cases in American history, where political figures have been shot or killed while engaging directly with the public. Comparisons have been drawn to the assassination attempts on figures ranging from President Ronald Reagan to more recent incidents involving members of Congress. The common thread is the exposure of public figures in uncontrolled or semi-controlled environments, with a desire for accessibility clashes with the risk of targeted violence. The setting of his assassination, a large public university, has placed attention on how campuses manage security for high-profile, controversial events. Many universities have relied on minimal visible security to avoid appearing heavy-handed, but this approach is now under review. UVU's lack of rooftop monitoring, controlled access, or pre-event security screening is being scrutinized as a systemic failure. The incident has prompted calls for federal legislation requiring minimum security standards when universities host nationally recognized political or controversial speakers. Suggested measures include mandatory bag checks, surveillance of vantage points, such as rooftops, and coordination with local law enforcement. Universities are also facing pressure to determine whether private security firms, rather than campus police alone, should be responsible for securing high-risk events. The balance between academic openness and safety is now at the center of a national conversation. Another dimension of the aftermath is the debate over free speech and safety. Supporters of open debate argue that universities should remain places where controversial figures can speak freely, regardless of the hostility they provoke. Critics counter that such events expose students and faculty to unacceptable risks, particularly when security measures are insufficient. This has led to calls for stricter guidelines on which figures universities can host, how events are structured, and what security thresholds must be met before approval. The assassination has intensified long-standing disputes about whether controversial speech is protected at any cost, or whether potential for violence justifies new restrictions. The legal and cultural balance between these positions remains unsettled. The legal process against Tyler Robinson is still unfolding. He has been charged with aggravated murder and additional felony counts, including firearm discharge, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Prosecutors have indicated their intent to seek the death penalty, citing premeditation and the political motive behind the attack. Robinson remains held without bail, under suicide watch precautions, as defense counsel prepares for a lengthy trial. The case is expected to proceed through extensive hearings, with significant national attention. Meanwhile, supporters and institutions connected to Charlie Kirk have organized commemorations. Turning Point USA has held vigils and pledged to continue Kirk's work. Political allies have described him as a central figure in conservative youth activism, while critics have debated the implications of his legacy. At Utah Valley University, memorials have been created, and the administration has promised a comprehensive review of security protocols for future events. In the longer term, Kirk's death has become part of his polarizing influence. For supporters, he is framed as a victim of political violence whose life and activism are to be continued by others. For detractors, his role in shaping the rhetoric of the American right remains a contested issue. Regardless of perspective, his assassination has underscored the risks of political engagement in a polarized era. The lingering shadow of this event is how it reshaped discourse on political violence in America. It highlighted vulnerabilities in campus security, deepened debates about the limits of free speech in dangerous environments, and reinforced concerns about how polarization fosters hostility strong enough to spill into violence. Whether reforms emerge from this tragedy or whether it becomes one of many cautionary tales remains to be seen. The case against Robinson will determine individual accountability, but the wider questions about security, speech, and violence will continue to reverberate. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.